All right, so now we're going to be looking at chapter 4, and I've done a couple of sort of changes with the way I'm sort of approaching this material. First of all, so chapter 4, I'm going to be looking at page 131. There's a couple of interesting slides and all that. But one of the first things I want you to note is that I have decided effectively to, I've gone through and broken up the various chapters that we're looking at. And you'll find all of these chapters broken down in the D2L section. As we look at, for example, chapter 4. Chapter 4 will basically have the slides, it'll have the exercise starts, the exercise solutions, and then anything else that I think is interesting in there. And so what's going on here is that I've got basically chapter 4, and when I go in there, I've taken the exercise starts, I've unzipped it into this. I'm actually going to do my work out of a copy of that, just because, if I want to go back and start over, I would do that. Obviously, I could just basically delete that directory and unzip it again. I mean, that's possible too, but I got the space, may as well use it. So I'm going to operate my business out of this particular directory here. And again, remember, all this is just me basically taking some of the stuff that came from the book's website and breaking it up to particular chunks in with slides and then the starts and the solutions. I will say, by the way, as we get to later chapters, when it says an exercise start, it could literally be the solution from the previous chapter. So sometimes you'll see that. Anyway, I'm also going to say that I have shifted a little bit too, in that I've got two versions of Visual Studio. I have the Enterprise Edition, which I can't even remember how I got, whether I got that because I was instructor or not, I don't know. I know from the Azure, I've also got the Community Edition as well. Which I believe is free just generally. I'm going to go back to using, oh man, I don't know. You know what? I'll use the Community Edition for this one. And how would you know, by the way, what I could do is I could go help. And if I go to the about, it'll say it right there, Community Edition. All right, cool beans. Wow, can I get back to that start? Get started? No, how do I get back to the start page? I can't remember, so I don't care. You know what? No, I like this. I like the start page. The start page is important. This little link down here, by the way, is the Enterprise Edition. I'm probably going to change that. All right, scrolling on down. Maybe I should put this in my edit there. Okay, so we're good. So now, this last chapter 4, this is sort of the beginning of actual more development, and some of the stuff that we sort of lightly brushed through in the previous few chapters are going to become a little more interesting now. I'm going to go and I'm going to open up the project solution, and I'm going to navigate to wherever I'm working out of, which in this case is course work in progress. I'm going to chapter 4. There's my exercise start, but this is the copy of it, which is where I'm kind of basically doing throwaway work. I'm going to open that up. Now, it says here to open the application that's in the whatever directory, and it's the application that's presented in 4.18. All right, so if I go look at 4.18, which I thought honestly it said what it was, but it's okay. 4.18 is just the invoice total form. All right, the invoice total form. So I'm going to go invoice total, open, and then open. Awesome, there it goes. All right. And I've noticed several times now, as I've gone and I've opened and closed or whatever, sometimes your opening scene may not look like this. If you don't have this toolbox pinned, for example, you won't see that. Sometimes you won't see this, but you'll actually see the code instead, right? And all I got to say is just have faith, find the actual thing that you want, to go into there. And we're going to be using the invoice total, and just basically find the code that you want. And obviously feel free to pause the video All right, so the first step is to open that. And so we've done number one. Yay, good for us. Number two, build and run the application. All right, so we're going to build and run the application. This is very much like what I keep saying. I'm going to go build it first. All right, and remember, by the way, if this errors out and it's got that sort of mark of the web thing, I have that video way up now that talks about how to get rid of that, especially if you're pulling from the solutions from the book. Sometimes I've found it, sometimes I haven't, that error. So anyway, just remember there's that, and Google's your friend too if you can't even get this far, because you really should be able to build this thing right away. So, okay, I'm going to build it. That looks great. I'm going to run it. I could have, I guess, hit F5, but I like, of course, just clicking on it and running it. So now I'm basically right at the beginning of number two. It says enter a valid subtotal like 225.50. So 225.50, and then I go calculate or hit enter, and that looks great. And I'm assuming that's right. Notice, by the way, the reason we're going with the solutions is that they've actually gone through and simplified the code here quite a bit. There's no ifs and all that. It's basically everyone seems to get 25%. You can see that right there. Everyone's getting 25%. So that's why don't just run with what you did before. The version you had at the end of chapter 3 is more complicated than this version. All right, so that seemed to work just great. Wonderful. It'll yield a discount amount. It says, okay, it says then enter a valid subtotal like 225.50 that will yield a discount amount that has more than 2 decimal spots. Well, it does not yield a discount amount that's got more than 2 decimal spots. What the heck are they trying to say? Well, you guys have got the same thing I've got. You took the solution file and it's not really jiving with this. Here's what I'm going to do. I think what they're trying to say, because what they want to make sure that only 2 decimals are displayed for the percentage. Right, for the percentage or for the amount? It's for the amount. Yeah, either way, all these guys are sitting here at 2 decimal spots. How would we sort of try to control that? Well, there was sort of some discussion about that for the slides. This is the slide or the section that they're kind of talking about. We're going to talk a little bit about these formats, and how we can at least, we may have lucked out with it working. We're going to make sure that this actually works. So back into here, and I can't remember, was there a way to make the code bigger? Was it just that? It was just that. Good deal. And you know what? I'm not doing too much with controls now, so I'm going to unpin that so I can get more space. All right, so we look at this, and when we're looking at basically how we want this thing to present, we're not going to be really looking at any of this section of the code. We're going to be looking down at this section of the code. And this section of the code has got these formats. And I'm trying to remember back on this side where the actual slide was for that. There it is. So P, when we're looking at P, right there, we're looking at P, that is going to be a percentage. When we're looking at C, that's going to be a currency. And that's why I get the magic dollar sign. What's going on, right, is it's basically taking the discount percent, which itself is a decimal, and this object has a method in it called toString, and it takes an argument, which is how to convert it. So it's going to take discount percent, which is a decimal. It's got a method in there called toString, and it's going to convert it to a percentage with 1 decimal. That's what the 1 means. When it comes to the text amount, the discount amount, it's got a method called toString, and it can convert it to currency. And that's what you see right there with the currency. And then, and the same deal with the second one. And these guys, you'll remember, what are these guys? These guys are the objects, the text box objects, which thankfully are named appropriately. So I think we're not on. If I click on it and I go and I look for the name design, there's the name. So there's a name, text discount percent. So we go back over to here, we look at the code. Text discount percent has got a property called text, and that receives what is being returned out of that method. Again, I hope that you remember some of this stuff from the whole Python procedures and functions, and the more functions actually that we talked about there. All right, so this guy here has got a P1. If I decided I wanted to make it P3, that would probably be 3 decimals. Always dangerous to predict before I actually run it, but let's try it anyway. So 225.50. I hit the enter button, and now I've got 3 decimals and not 2. So basically, this is one of the ways that we can control how this thing is actually presented, right? Another one, going back to here for a second, float. So that's the F or D for digits. So if you look, if I decided that I want this not to be currency, but I want it to be float, I could probably put an F there. I think that'll work just on its own. I don't think I need to put the number of decimals. So I'm going to go 225.50, hit the enter button, and notice it no longer looks like currency anymore. It looks like just a normal number with 2 decimals, because that's how it naturally comes out. If I basically said F1 and I run it again, what we're going to see is 225.50 is it is now 1 decimal spot. All right, so that's kind of how we're going to control it as we're controlling what we're presenting. And so anyway, to get back to what the book's asking, I'm going to basically make this a 2. I'm going to make this currency, by the way, naturally only has 2 decimals, right? We don't typically care about fractions of pennies. And so this should basically solve that problem, 225.50, and now we got the 2 decimals. All right, good. Number 3, enter $1,000. It says enter $1,000. So over here, I go $1,000. Now that $sign is going to cause all sorts of grief. Boom, and it does. It causes all sorts of grief. Here's our $1,000 down here. I talked about this a little bit earlier. This cannot be converted. Right here, it's saying input string was not in the correct format. So what's going on here is it's trying to basically take the text from the subtotal, so the text property from the text total subtotal object, and using the convert object, it's going to try to convert that to decimal. It can't convert $1,000, just like it couldn't convert ABCD or whatever I did last time. And so what happens is that it has a problem. It has an exception, or what normal people would call an error, right? It has an error, and I haven't been able to trap it. So what's happening is that that little application had the error. It doesn't know what to do with it. So then it passes it up a level. And in this case, this level is this IDE, Integrated Development Environment. It is basically Visual Studio that's capturing the error. If this thing had been allowed to have been made its way into its little program, an exe, and I shared it off to other people and they ran it on their PCs, what would likely happen is that it would encounter the error in the program, wouldn't know what to do with it. Then the program itself has got an error and shoots it to the operating system, and the operating system will likely at that point give you one of those, amazing errors like general protection faults or what have you. All right, so that's kind of the point of that. And this is called break mode. And I think that's about all we're going to get out of that deal. Note the highlighted statement. So it's saying here, this is the highlighted statement. It is telling us some stuff. We can kind of look and see a little like sort of dump is what I call this of the memory. And if we don't see enough, we can maybe make that bigger so we can see what's going on. And this is great, by the way. If you're getting a standard error, you can kind of come in here. Sorry, non-standard error. You'd be able to kind of figure out what kind of error is this and work from there. But anyway, so pretty advanced, pretty cool. You'll want to basically deal with that. And then we got nothing else to do here, so we may as well just stop debugging with that. And now we basically bailed out, right? Notice, by the way, that was a runtime error. I've already talked about syntax errors where you basically, make a spelling mistake, or maybe you have a variable that doesn't exist. But this was a runtime error. It would have no idea that you were going to pass in $1,000 until it actually happened. All right, so that's kind of the end of the test your code part. I got to find a better spot for this book. Anyway, so now we're on the experiment with code part, which is now number 5. Modify the first statement in the button calculate click. All right, so let's go over to here. And we're going to double click in here. And there's our first statement. Yes, we were already there, but whatever. And it's saying it wants us to use the parse method of the decimal class, right? Instead of the 2 decimal method of the convert class. These also were in the slides, and they were also in the book. I think yeah, it's page 117 of the book or slide 36. So if I go over and I go back, here's an example of what they're trying to get us to do, the parse, right? The parse. So I'm going to go here. Actually, I tell you what, you know what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make that a comment, right? And then I'm going to go decimal subtotal is assigned, and they're basically wanting me to use the it's decimal class, I think. Decimal class, parse method, and then the actual thing I'm trying to do. So subtotal. And I'm not trying to parse the actual object. I'm trying to parse the object, the text property of that object. That's where my magic code is. Put a semicolon and let's run it and see what happens. Okay, I'm going to put 1,000 in without the $sign, and it works just great. So you're going to say, I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, when we use decimal, when we use the decimal class, when we use the convert class, and I can't remember what the book actually said, but in all honesty, I would think I'd probably use the parse if I'm dealing with numerical data. But what you would do is you would probably talk to one of your more senior developers at the shop you're at and basically say, hey, what do you think? And they probably have some kind of theory around that. All right, the next thing, so that was it. So we tested, it works just the same. Number 6, round the values that are stored in the discount amount and invoice total to 2 decimals and delete the format codes. So what's going on here is that we are down here, the currency, I guess, is kind of helping, but we want to basically round, we want to explicitly control the round, right? Rather than let the currency format round for us, we are going to do this ourselves. And that was on slide 54. So let me show you what I'm talking about. If I go to here to slide 54, way down here, and towards the end of our section of the book, we actually had this discussion. Actually, where was it? Okay, well, now I won't remember where that was, but there was something about the math class. So the math class, and it's got a round method where you basically pass in something that you want rounded and then what you want it rounded to. So what we're going to do in here is we're not going to open up my Alienware. That is not what we're going to do. What we're going to do is we're going to go into this and we're going to say, probably this guy should be rounded and that guy should be rounded. So we're going to put in the math class, math. Okay, you know what? Let's put a space and let's pick it up here. So math, so this is a math class. We're going to go round. Notice round is fairly common, so it assumes that. We're going to open parentheses, suck in our formula. Then we're going to go comma 2, and we're going to close parentheses. And we're going to do that exact same thing to the guy below. Copy, paste, and by the way, normally what I would have wanted to have done, okay, forget it, is I would have probably tested the first one first before I would have tested line 25 here before I just assumed it for there. But anyway, so this guy should work. If I go, if I now basically go and build it. Oh, we're still in debug mode. Stop that. All right, so now I'm going to run it. Okay, oh, actually, no, Grant, pay attention to what you said. You said we should build first. So build. Again, no errors, thankfully. Still haven't figured out why that's a problem, so I'm going to get rid of it, and then I'm going to run it. Boom. Right, $1,000, or even $10,000, and now we've got this fine. If I had some kind of weird number like that, it's rounding it. Awesome. So that's kind of how we got that solved. And I think that's going to be it for exercise 4.1 and for this video. Next, I'll be looking at exercise 4.2.